wanted to go over some things that I usually look out for when I'm just making sure my violin is in good shape. I also do this for my students. Just a couple important things that you may or may not already know. So first thing is I always take a look at the bridge. You want to make sure that the bridge is nice and straight. It needs to be straight as far as the vertical sense, and it also needs to be straight as far as when you're looking down at the violin at like a bird's eye view. And so what I do is I just hold the violin up like this, kind of, right at eye level. And then I close one eye and I see if my bridge is straight. So a couple luthiers told me in the past that since the bridge is kind of triangular shaped, you want the tailpiece side to be absolutely vertical, and then you want the other side, the side that's on the fingerboard side, to be slanted. So when you're looking for straightness, you're going to look at the tailpiece side. Now, if it's not straight, I usually very, very carefully, pull on the top of the bridge until it is straight again. But it's a little scary, and I have actually broken a bridge once doing it. I really shouldn't confess this in a public way, but it was a very, very old violin. It was a school instrument that was really in bad condition, and I was trying to just straighten it, and because it was already a brittle piece of wood, it just broke in half. But that's the only time it happened. Trust me, it's not a big deal, but you definitely want to make sure you're not putting pressure on it. So when I do it, I lift upward and I make sure that I'm not putting any added pressure on the bridge so that it doesn't snap. So if you notice that it's not straight, I would not recommend you doing it yourself. You take it to somebody who can do it. I've done it a million times on my own instrument and on fine instruments, on student instruments, especially the little instruments. They tend to have bridges that really move around quite a lot. So there's not too much you can do. You just have to keep an eye on it. But definitely at least be aware of it. I have also seen a student's bridge literally fly out because it was tilting so much that eventually it just flew out, and imagine the velocity at which it went. So just be careful, make sure it's not tilting too much. The other thing about a tilting bridge is that it does tend to warp. So if you leave it in that tilted way for a long time, I'd say months. If it's there like that for months and it just keeps on tilting, then it can start to warp and stay that way. So it's better to catch it early so that you maintain the health of your bridge. Now, the other way you want to look to see if, in a bird's eye view, to see if your bridge is straight. Sometimes like one side, like let's say the E string side of the bridge gets pulled upward, like towards the scroll, or the G string side gets pulled upward. There are different issues here. The feet of the bridge, I really would not want to tamper with on a nice instrument. So I'm only talking about the top part of it. So, if the top part where the strings are touching, if that's, the strings have been pulling the bridge, then I'm just talking about the top of the bridge. On very little violins, I have been known to move the feet of the bridge, but I really don't like to. Maybe it's just me, but I don't like to, move around the bridge because I feel like there's the optimal place that it needs to be, and I don't know what that is unless I am trained and I get my ruler out and I measure everything properly. So I leave that to the violin shop and the luthier or the expert there. Now, but my main point here is not for you to go tampering with things, because I don't want any accidents to happen at home, but just for you to keep an eye on it. If you notice anything amiss, then you should go and bring your violin to somebody, your teacher, your school teacher, your private teacher, your local violin shop, anyone or any friend. Just bring it to somebody who can can help you out. And the other thing that I check is if there's if the fine tuners are very, very low. Often when a violin goes out of tune, it gets flat. So we find ourselves, twisting the fine tuners and raising the pitch again. So every time you keep twisting, the fine tuner is getting shorter and shorter and tighter and tighter. And the way that most, not all, but most fine tuners have this mechanism where there's this piece that goes down underneath the tailpiece. So if you just lift your violin and look at it at eye level, you'll see under the tailpiece that something's going down. Now, sometimes when the construction of it is a certain way, it can tend to dig into the violin wood, and you definitely don't want that. I've seen some damage being done, permanent damage. So because I've seen that in the past multiple times, I always keep an eye on that to make sure that it's not happening with any of my students' instruments. So I do just peek under there from time to time to make sure. If I notice that the fine tuners are especially low, then I reset them. So you just have to loosen all the fine tuners up till they're high again, not all the way tall, but somewhat tall, and then just tune everything with the pegs if you're able to do that. And I just do this routinely during my students' lesson in the beginning of the lesson. Now, it's also a bit annoying when the fine tuner is like all the way down. It gets tighter. It's harder to twist. And then often I find my students get lazy and they don't want to tune their instrument too much because it's at the very bottom and there's nowhere more further to go. So I just make sure that everything's the fine tuners are tall enough again. And I usually also eventually teach my students how to do it themselves if they're responsible enough to do so. In a separate video in the future, I do plan to give you a step-by-step tutorial of how to install strings and how to tune strings with the peg. That requires a bit of explanation, so I want to leave that for its own video in the future. But the other thing is, common thing that we come across is like weird buzzing noises. So when you're playing your violin, especially when you play loud and you hear buzzing sounds or extraneous sounds, you definitely want to kind of check a few things. There's definitely a few common things that it might be. It could be the fine tuner that when you loosen it, like lefty-loosey, right? When you loosen it, there's a point where it's very, very loose. So like you'll spin it and you'll feel a bit of traction, right? And then all of a sudden you keep spinning it and then it gets very easy to spin. So you just want to tighten that fine tuner until it kind of lightly, and then until it kind of stops a little bit. And then you can feel where there's a little bit more friction. And that's when the fine tuner is actually starting to work, actually. Before that, when it was super loose, it wasn't doing anything, actually. And so if any of the fine tuners are kind of up too high and they're in that very loose setting, then they will vibrate. I mean, think about it. You're playing your bow and the string is vibrating quite vigorously, and so anything that's loose or movable on the instrument or near the instrument will make a sound. It will make some sort of a buzzing noise. The other common thing that a buzzing noise could be is what you're wearing. So if the first thing I check is the fine tuners, and I check if the student is wearing like a zipper. They might have a zipper up here, like a jacket. I wear a lot of vests, so my zipper is like right there, so I have to actually fold my collar under so that it's not near my violin. Or it could be necklaces, could be earrings. So there are certain necklaces I know for sure I cannot get away with wearing it when I'm playing the violin, so I just leave them at home, which is a shame because I'd be wearing a lot more necklaces. But there are certain things that we can't do. I mean, we can't wear thick turtlenecks, so we can't wear certain hoodies. When kids wear really, like thick hoodies, I have to show them how to fold that material down. So there's a lot of, temperamental things, and we have like hair issues, getting caught. I mean, anyway, so back to the buzzing noises. It could also be that the chin rest is loose. So I usually just hold the chin rest and I try to shake it in a horizontal fashion and see if it's nicely fastened and secured. If not, you're going to have to tighten it. And there's usually a chin rest key with a tiny, like a skinny, tip, and then you use that to tighten the chin rest. You don't want to tighten it too tight though, so you don't damage your instrument. Another thing could be is your shoulder rest. So if you have the shoulder rest that have feet on it, like that, the one that goes across, or anything that has anything hard on it, that will tend to buzz. Now, when you put the shoulder rest on, you look at it, it might look like it's not touching, but as soon as you put your violin on your shoulder, start playing, you apply a little bit of pressure, and then because the shoulder rest gives a little bit, it will go up and touch the back of the violin and it will buzz that way too. So I usually remedy that by taking like a paper and folding it up into a small kind of a thick thing, and then we just put it between the shoulder rest and the violin. Somehow I usually kind of just secure it to the shoulder rest somehow, or something. You can use whatever you think is appropriate, but we need to kind of put something in between that is not hard and will not make a vibrating sound. The final thing that it could be is bad news. It could be that there is a crack in your wood, in which case there'll be like a opening, right? And those two edges will vibrate against each other, or there could be a seam open, which means any point where there's been glue, used, and the glue may dry out and it may lose its stickiness. So then it opens up a little bit, and then those two places will vibrate against each other. Now that could be an expensive repair, but hopefully it's not that. Usually whenever I've found any buzzing sounds, we've been able to pinpoint it, and it usually is not bad news. So those are just a couple of things that I want you to look out for. Also, not letting, rosin sit on your violin too long. I don't even like it to sit there for 24 hours for one day. I usually wipe it as soon as I see it. You especially want to look underneath the neck and underneath the chin rest, the tailpiece, also in the C bow. You just want to make sure all the rosin is off. And also, I'm bad at this one, but you should also clean the rosin off of your bow. The stick portion of your bow often has lots of rosin residue there. So hope that helps. Hope you have a great day, and I'll see you tomorrow.